Following the flock, a Dvar Torah for Parashat Vayetze. The Israeli nation is compared to a flock. Well, the Israeli nation is compared to many things, but among other also to a flock. And in the next few minutes, I don't plan to explain how the nation of Israel is compared to a flock, but rather to accompany the phenomenon of the flocks in the stories of the forefathers in a general manner. Before we begin, it's worth emphasizing that it's understandable that the period of the forefathers, when the nation of Israel consists of a collection of individual nomads, we probably would find more reference to flocks as opposed to after the division of the land, a period that would be characterized by estates, planting, and fields. Therefore, it was no surprise to me that the word flock appears many more times in the book of Genesis and Bereshit than in the other books of the Tanakh. It was interesting to see that Sefer Bamidbar, the book, is the book of individual animals, sheep, goat, rams, and that the word Eder, herd, appears in Shir HaShirim and Sefer Bereshit equally, despite the significant numerical preference Bereshit has as to the numbers of chapters. But the more interesting distinction was actually within Bereshit itself. As we said, Bereshit deals a lot with flocks. Hevel is a shepherd. Avraham ascends from Egypt, among other things, with flocks. There is a quarrel between the shepherds of Avraham and the shepherds of Lot. In Brit Ben Abetarim, there are also a goat and a ram. When exiting the house of Abimelech, Avraham receives also flocks. In the covenant between Abimelech and Avraham, Avraham gives him 7 lambs. Instead of Yitzchak, a ram is sacrificed. And when the Eved, servant, describes what Avraham has, he mentions also flocks. So far, the genealogy of flocks in the first half of the book of Bereshit, which, as you can see, play a present hidden role in about a third of the Tanakh stories until Perek Vav. Why hidden? Because even though there are flocks, they usually do not play an important role in the story. While with Hevel, the flocks are important, and also Yitzchak's ram will not be forgotten. In other stories, they play a secondary role. All this is about to change in the stories of Yaakov. In the story of Yaakov's blessings, Rivka prepares 2 young goats from the flock so that Yitzchak will bless Yaakov, and their skins will play an important role in the disguise. When Yaakov arrives to Haran, he will meet 3 flocks, learn that the flocks cannot be watered until all the flocks gathered to roll the stone off the well, meet his future wife Rachel the shepherdess, and water her flocks. When Yaakov wants to leave Haran the first time, he agrees to keep Lavan's flock in exchange for speckled and spotted sheep of the goats, which he will tell Lavan to take out and put in another herd. He will teach us an important and incomprehensible chapter in the science of flock breeding, and he will have large flocks and maidservants and manservants and camels and donkeys and so on. When Yaakov feels that Lavan is starting to become a little less friendly, he invites his wives to the field to his flock and tells them about what the flock bears and about a dream full of streaked, speckled, and spotted animals. He takes advantage of the moment Lavan goes to shear his flock before fleeing, and then Yaakov tells Lavan that he guarded his flock well for him, and in response Lavan shouts that the flock is his flock. When Yaakov meets Esav, he tells him, among other things, that he has flocks. He also gives him, among other things, flocks. And at the end, he tells Esav that he can't keep up with his pace because the flocks may die. After Rachel dies, Yaakov's family leaves Migdal Eder, and I forgot, her name, Rachel, actually means sheep, meaning flock. And if this hasn't convinced you, then I really don't know what will. Yaakov's descendants will continue being shepherds, but not for long. Yosef's dreams are not about sheep. He talks instead about produce and astronomy. His brothers continue to take the sheep to graze in Shechem, and Yaakov sends Yosef to see the welfare of his brothers and the flocks, and suddenly the flock have a very different role. The brother will use the flock to slaughter a goat kid to coat Yosef's coat in blood. The brother's representative, Yehuda, may try to convey business as usual, but after the death of his sons and wife and sending his daughter-in-law back to her father's house, he will arrive at Timnah with the sheep shearers, and Tamar hears that he's going to shear his flock and waits for him on the road of Timnah. He offers her a baby goat from the flock and sends the kid goat by the hand of his friend, but does not find Tamar. From this moment on, Yaakov's family is no longer engaged in herding. From here on, we will deal with dreams, produce, food, donkeys, and a myriad of other things, but the flock disappears. Disappear, did I say? Not entirely. After Yosef reveals himself to his brothers and Yaakov and his sons descend to Egypt, Yosef needs to introduce his brothers to Paro. In those 10 verses, Yaakov's flocks are emphasized 6 times. The fragmented family reunites in all its woolly glory, and when that happens, even the Egyptians will offer, among other things, their flocks to Yosef, the family representative. Is anyone surprised that they're waiting for Moshe, the loyal shepherd, to shepherd them and take them out of Egypt? Not me. לעילוי נשמת תלמידי היקר עמיחי שמעון בן ישי ובתיה רובין, השם ייקום דמו, Dovi Holtz, one who loves sheep and Tanakh.